the less I own my own sexual needs and desires, the less I can be responsible for them. So people who disown their sexuality are very likely to act out sexually destructively because their sexuality is like a dog without an owner.
Hey, curious people, you're listening to the Self-Led in Bed podcast, where we explore our fascinating internal sexual landscapes and discover our authentic sexual selves. I'm your host, Patricia Rich, a certified internal family systems and sex therapist, coach, and creator of the Self-Led Sexuality model for healing, pleasure, and empowerment. I've spent the last 30 years helping people to develop fulfilling relationships with themselves and others. If you're ready for some warm, smart, and juicy conversations, me and my parts invite you and your parts to get cozy and settle in. Given how vulnerable and shameful sexuality can feel, it's no surprise that lots of protector parts take on big roles to try to keep us safe. Befriending these sexual protector parts can be really challenging, and that's why I'm excited to share today's episode where I speak with Mike Elkin, Senior Lead Trainer for the IFS Institute with over 50 years in the field of therapy and 25 teaching IFS. At 83 years of age, Mike is a beloved and wise teacher with his own unique style, informed by his background in hypnosis, addiction treatment, and hanging around billiard halls. On this episode, he shares his views on sexuality, shame, moral meaning, gender, and patriarchy. He also plays a few rounds of Stump the Chump, in which he demonstrates how he would work with several challenging sexual protector parts, which I role play. He identifies the deepest human drive as needing to believe I am a good person and explains moral meaning as parts assigning judgments of good and bad to everything, which then fuels shame cycles in addiction and intimacy. He highlights self-energy's superpower to wipe away moral meaning, which he believes is not a real thing, and yet it provokes feelings and brings up protector parts who put out fires with gasoline. So Mike is good at activating parts, which he acknowledges is something he does both to make teaching points and also because it feels good for one of his parts. I noticed my parts jumping around a few times during our conversation as Mike made broad statements that they didn't always agree with. And at those moments, I was able to stay connected with my own parts and then bring curiosity and clarity to our discussion, allowing me to appreciate the efficiency and effectiveness of Mike's approach for contracting with challenging protectors and being able to reach the exiles who may be carrying heavy burdens. I invite listeners to notice how your parts respond to our conversation and what points resonate with you the most. What challenging protectors do you encounter in your own sexual system? A little more about Mike Elkin. From his 1984 work, Families Under the Influence, his close collaboration with Dr. Richard Schwartz in the early adoption of IFS, and his years as an IFS trainer, Mike has leveraged his expertise to innovate the most effective methods of healing trauma, including hypnotic techniques to supplement IFS. His dedication to spreading the principles of IFS therapy extends beyond professional circles as he actively works to make the model accessible to individuals and organizations worldwide. A visionary in his field, Mike continues to inspire the next generation of therapists, empowering them to foster healing and transformation in their clients' lives. Hi, Mike. I'm so glad you are here on the Self-Led in Bed podcast.
Me too.
It's good to see you. I actually had a chance to see you in person not so long ago at the IFS conference, and it was just a lucky moment because you were sitting by yourself, and I got to have a few minutes with you, and it was really lovely.
It was fun to catch up.
Before we delve into today's topic, I'm wondering if you'd like to share where you are located geographically right now.
Oh, I live in Marblehead, Massachusetts, which is a little finger of land that sticks out in the Atlantic about 15 miles north of Boston.
Can you see the ocean from your
Not
house?
from my house, no.
Hmm.
I have friends who have houses where I can see. But I'm not much of a walker these days, but the ocean is about a 5 minute walk from my house,
Mm.
and a very nice beach is about a 5 or 6 minute bicycle ride from my house. So, I have all the ocean I need.
That's lovely. I have a part who has a strong desire to live on water and the
Yeah,
ocean being an extra bonus. So I always like hearing about people's
right. Although
proximity.
waterside property is not quite as attractive as it was once because it's going to be underwater maybe within my lifetime.
Mm.
I'm pretty old by now.
Do you want to share how old you are or
I'm
anything
83.
else about your identities? Go ahead.
I'm 83,
Mhm.
and I've been doing therapy for over 50 years. I've been teaching IFS for over 25. Yeah, I started in 99, so yeah, over 25 years. And I I love playing three cushion billiards, which is a very arcane game. But at my age, I'm still very competitive, and I win more than I lose against people half my age. So it's really a gift.
Where do you play? Do you have a billiard table?
Well, I don't. There's a place about 45 minutes from my house, which is the only place you can play billiards in New England. So there are people coming. There are some people who drive a couple of hours there and back every day. It's owned by a man named Mason Schumi, who in 2006 was the national champion, and uh, and he runs a wonderful place. It's a nice community, and I was just in Africa recently, a couple of weeks ago, and I was at an orphanage there, and their television had broken, and I was guided to replace their television, and I got the people at the pool room to contribute, and I'm hoping to get the pool room as a pool room as a community to sponsor a couple of kids in orphanages in Kenya and Tanzania, and get these loafers, involved in something that'll make them feel good, because helping other people makes you feel good. It just
Hmm,
and so
that's lovely.
that's a
That's amazing.
so
So
that's the
speaking
project.
of
So
speaking of feeling good and scoring, maybe we can start to talk about sex.
I thought you'd never ask. So
So is sexuality something that you have addressed in your professional life over those many decades?
I've done couples work for 50 years, and somehow, amazingly, it's never come up once. But it's I've never thought of myself as a sex therapist, and I'm not. But if you do, well, basically, it's one of the major drives in people's lives. So it's a major issue for everybody, including people who call themselves asexual, because they may, in fact, I have to admit, I have a part that's a little skeptical that people can be asexual. But
Mm.
I've met several people who that's their experience of themselves, and I have to accept and respect that.
And
But
right there, there's a good opportunity to notice, right? Like, because I always, for our listeners, always invite people to notice their parts as they're listening, right? And so, how we all have certain relationships to different sexualities, some of which land really easily in our system and some of which challenge us. And I'm just
well,
appreciating you naming that one is challenging to you. And you're also
it
seeing
just
people that,
it's so yeah, it's so clashes with my experience, and yet
mhm,
the people that's their experience, that's the world they live in. But of course, they feel very other about that. So
mhm,
their sexuality or absence of it is a
mhm,
major issue in their life.
mhm.
And a kind of connection that's available to pretty much everybody else
Mm.
in the human constellation is not
Yeah.
available to them. But I've done,
I'm going to jump in. Can I jump in? Because I think
yeah,
there
you
may be
sure
a
can.
generational difference here around that in some ways, right?
Well,
What I would say is that people have to contend with, in my opinion, that people have to figure out where they are in relationship to their own sexuality and if that's an important aspect of who they are, and then what makes their life fulfilling may or may not revolve around that.
yeah. And I also, it's been my experience that I haven't met anybody yet who is, really comfortable with their sexuality.
Hmm.
That everybody I've met and talked to about it has parts that are very unsure, fearful in some
Mhm.
ways in relation to their sexuality. And I've never met anybody yet who doesn't have significant amounts, their sexuality does not generate shame in some ways. That, there's a very wide spectrum, and of course, the people that I talk to about it are people who have sought psychotherapy.
Mhm.
So there may be, a well-adjusted bunch out there that I haven't met, but I've done a lot of work with people who are very successful in their lives and have very good relationships. But if we get to discussing sexuality, some shame always comes up.
Yeah, I'm
That's been
curious
my
about that. Yes. And I think I could share that I started this podcast last January. There's maybe been close to 20 episodes at this point, but the most popular one is on shame and guilt in the sexual system. And
yeah.
partly it was a great episode, and partly I think shame is just such a heavy burden for so many people when we start talking about sex.
Well, it's the heavy burden for everybody. It's the most painful experience human beings can have. And it's interesting, a spiritual teacher of mine advanced the idea that sex is so triggering for us because it's a challenge to God. In other words, it gives us the power to create life. And and he believes that the sense of challenging God and creating life generates enormous unease about
Hmm.
sex. That sounded plausible to me, actually.
There's
He,
also so much vulnerability, right? When we start to really get naked emotionally and physically with someone else, and maybe our most raw needs come forward and we're so exposed, that
yeah,
can
they were
bring
all,
up so
yeah.
much.
I mean, it just, yeah, it generates discomfort in parts of pretty much everybody, even people who uh, have what seem to be very good sex lives,
Mhm.
who have a lot of pleasurable sex with a partner they feel very connected to.
And I wanted to ask you, Mike, about your work with morality. Like you talk a lot about people's need to believe they're good and moral meaning. And for those who maybe aren't familiar with you or your work, could you give like a thumbnail about
Sure.
what that is?
I mean, having done therapy for 50 years, it's been my observation that the most powerful motivator for us humans, and of course, I've only worked with people who grew up in Western cultures pretty much, but the most powerful motivator for us is the need to feel like a good person and be experienced by our important community as a good person. And of course, a good Nazi and a good Quaker behave very differently, but I think they have an equal need to be perceived as following the values consistent with their community.
Hmm.
And that's, of course, complicated by the fact that we all have parts that basically can be described by every negative adjective we can find, greedy, petty, vengeful, dishonest, whatever. Everybody I know, except people who are emotionally blind, they might call them psychopaths or sociopaths, or people who cannot perceive their their responses. But everybody that I know is aware of those parts in them, and but the preponderance of most people's experience is that they have enough good connections and enough parts that have experienced love and acceptance so that they're not in a lot of pain all the time. But we can't be bad. And if I say anything, for instance, that implies that you're bad, and I think you're bad, your only choice to deal with me is to find a way to cancel me, because you can't experience that. And if you do experience that pretty on a regular basis, you're in such pain that you need to relieve that pain, and whatever you use to relieve it is going to generate more shame. And, that's where the whole process of addiction moves in, or people who are in such pain they need to relieve it, and they find something that seems to relieve it. It could be anything in time and space. And then, irony being the driving force of the universe, whatever they find, their relationship to it generates more and more shame, which needs more and more relief, which generates more and more shame.
Right. So
So,
the
and moral meaning is a term, as far as I know, I've coined. In other words, I've never, I've, talked about it a lot now for some years, and I've, to a very sophisticated audience mostly. And nobody has said, yeah, this guy's written about that, or this woman talks about that. So as far as I know, and my definition of moral meaning is it's information that gives us, that contributes to our deciding whether somebody is a good person or a bad person. And our parts not give moral meaning to experience. If I, if I look inside and be aware, I notice I'm giving moral meaning to your hairdo and the kind of glasses you've chosen and the color of your shirt. It goes down to that. And what's more, different parts of me give different moral meaning to it. And
so
there's
can
never,
you I'm sorry, go ahead. I was curious what my parts are like, oh, what are they saying? And like what's an example of like what the different parts would be
well,
saying
for
about
instance,
that?
your hair is both neat and wild. And that, there's a part of me that interprets that as saying something about your personality. In this case, the ones I'm aware of are giving it positive moral meaning. But I'm sure I can find parts that are giving it negative moral meaning. It's just the ones that are clearer to me. You know, you line how you present lines up with my model in my head of an attractive person. Somebody who uh, I connect to and am friendly with, which means, of course, nothing about you. The fact that I like you doesn't mean anything about
Mhm.
you. It means something about my nexus, whatever, of what an attractive person is. And if, you know, it, if I associated your looks with something negative, then I
Mhm.
wouldn't like you, and you're
And
just you.
is the moral piece in there that if you're attractive, then you're a good person and you're safe for me, and if you're not,
That quite, that's all over the place. And
Mhm.
I could probably find parts of me that judge you negatively, if I look for them. But moral judgment has never had a positive outcome. It just, it's of no use, and it never has a positive outcome, but we can't not do it. Our parts give moral meaning to experience. That's what they do. And that's why the discovery of self energy and an easy way of accessing it was such a gift to us, because self has a superpower, and its superpower is one is it does not give moral meaning to experience, it doesn't judge, and two, it has the power upon request of removing moral meaning from experience, which is what unburdening is. Because I was taught, as we were all, that a burden is the meaning that a part has given its experience and the feelings and beliefs that proceed from that. And I add a word to that, is that I think a burden is the moral meaning that a part has given its experience and the feelings and beliefs that proceed from that. And what unburdening is removing the moral meaning so that experiences that people have had that their parts have interpreted as meaning they're bad. Like a parent says, not now, I'm busy, for instance. It can be something as trivial as that. And I've seen, well, and a part will take that to mean I'm not worth time or attention, and I'm presumptuous and bad and stupid for asking for it and all that. And self witnesses that, and the part says, can you remove the moral meaning from this? And it's gone. And that's why IFS is so magically effective with people.
That's so interesting. And of course, I'm thinking about all the moral meaning associated with sexuality
Oh,
and
yeah.
the questions I shared. I told some people I didn't tell them who, you were still a mystery guest to them, but I said I was going to be talking with someone about challenging sexual protectors
Yeah.
and asked them to list some. This was actually in my Facebook group. And there was a lot about growing up in communities where they were told that their sexual feelings were dangerous, they were bad, that you can only have
Right.
sex in one
And even
container.
then, and then it's not so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even if it's for procreation, you really shouldn't enjoy it.
Right.
Yeah, no, and that's not even mildly unusual. Yeah,
Yeah. So, this idea, on the one hand, that there is sexual morality, I mean, we could get into a big philosophical
yeah.
discussion. I also would like to play Stump the Chump with you if we get a chance.
Oh, I'd love to.
So, we're not going to resolve the whole question of sexual morality in the world, right? Like if there's certain maybe ethics of how to conduct oneself that show respect or consideration for other people.
Right.
That's different, right, than what you're talking about.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I understand that question.
Yeah.
Could
I
you?
guess I, yeah. So let me restate that. And
Yeah.
I guess when we're saying you're erasing the moral meaning, I'm hearing
Oh,
about
self
erasing the burden. Self can erase
self
the
can erase it.
burden.
I can't.
And we're not saying that there's not a place for moral behavior in the when
Uh,
you're a human in the world engaging in sexual interactions with other people. I don't think you're saying there's not a role for ethical or moral
well,
behavior.
there's certainly a role for respectful treatment of other beings. See, but uh, and the more access we have to self energy, the more likely it is that we will relate to other people's self energy, and therefore we will be kind and generous and loving because self is the aspect of our being that is not connected to identity. So the more access I have to self energy, the more I will see us as basically the same, and that will diminish otherness, and otherness generates judgment and cruelty. It just does. And so uh, we will behave more generously and constructively the more access we have to self. The more we judge morally, the less likely it is that we will behave generously because there's no reason I should respect you because you're a slut. Why should I respect you? And that the more that kind of judgment is part of my experience, the less likely it is that I'm going to be safe to be around, sexually or any other way.
Mhm.
When I use the word slut because we're talking about sex, but I can use any of the number of, and if you don't, You run out of them
So
just
this
looking in this.
speaks, I think, to some of the intergenerational burdens that can happen here,
Right.
intergenerational legacies as well, right? Because
Yeah.
if one person is judged for their sexual depravity, perhaps, or they're abused in some way sexually and take in a lot of the shame, whatever it
Right.
is, there's something coming from someone else's judgmental
Right.
parts that lands in a shaming way in the
Right.
system of someone, and then they may need to develop a part that does that to someone else as in order to try to get some relief from their
Yeah.
own
Yeah.
shame.
And also, the less I own my own sexual needs and desires, the less I can be responsible for them. So people who disown their sexuality are very likely to act out sexually destructively because their sexuality is like a dog without an owner. And they don't get to decide what they do about it because it's not theirs. So that's why people, televangelists tend to get arrested in bathrooms and tend to, and why, the phenomenon of guru disease, where, these advanced spiritual beings find it spiritually necessary to share their sexuality with young men or women, depending on their. And that's so not unusual that people know what I'm saying when I use the word guru disease, even though it's not a common term.
Right.
But
So that also brings in elements of power and control
sure.
too, right? So there's the disowning of our sexual needs and desires, but there's also the way that parts can use our sexuality to really fuel our own sense of power
And
and control.
interestingly, guru disease is also, it's much less common, but I know of women who are in these very powerful positions who are sexually exploitative. And I think that's part of the same phenomenon. It's just, because male sexuality and female sexuality are late, we use the same word for it, but they're totally different things. And male sexuality is inherently, I think, objectifying and predatory. That
That's an
doesn't mean
interesting
men.
statement.
That
Yeah.
doesn't mean men are inherently predatory and objectifying, but male sexuality is, whether that's, regardless of where it's aimed, whether people are straight or gay or some other
Hmm.
orientation, men behave a particular way. I like my guesses, except for this is a guess statistically, but I think except for academic stuff, you don't have any pictures of naked people in your house because women don't usually objectify sexuality to the extent that they, are particularly turned
Mhm.
on by pictures of attractive people. They are to some extent, but not enough so they'll buy them. Whereas men use porn,
Mhm.
and the ones who don't use porn are lying about that, in my experience.
So, yes, I'm noticing my parts, Mike, as you're sharing all of this.
Well, I
I
like to
noticed
be
some of my
provocative,
parts.
that.
My parts are jumping around because they don't agree with certain things or they want to
Of
like
course,
parse it apart and like, is that a part in men that you're
of
kind of
course it is.
pasting as like all
Yeah,
of
no,
male
it's a part.
sexuality?
It's a part of men. It's not
Yeah.
self, that's for sure.
So that's interesting because do you think sexuality lives in one part and you could describe it in one way, or do you feel that different parts can have different aspects of
I think
sexuality?
I think my guess is huge number of our parts generate sexual energy and have sexuality. I don't think that we have a sexual part. I think we have countless sexual parts that contribute to our sexual response,
Hmm.
and uh, some of them are nice, and some of them not so much.
And I like to think about how parts use our sexual energy to do their jobs.
Yeah,
And this might take us to Stump the Chump again, Mike.
Okay.
Can you explain the rules and what it is? Because I think I know, but and for our listeners,
Oh, what it
what is
is.
Stump the Chump?
Okay. Well, it's actually a term that I think, that Dick uses. And he would, ask somebody to role play a difficult part, a client in a difficult part, and he'd address it. I originally got it. There was a radio show by the Mariachi brothers in Boston, uh, a car talk, and one of their features was Stump the Chump, which is people would ask difficult questions about cars. And I think Dick heard that. It's a very popular show. As a matter of fact, the mother of the Mariachi brothers was my wife's agent for a while. But Dick used that term, and what I do, and it's a way that what I do now in my life is I consult other therapists for the most part. I still have a few clients, but mostly now I do consultation groups, and it's what I'm very good at it, in my opinion, and I love doing it. And one of the ways I like to consult to people who are willing is invite them to role play the clients they're having trouble with. And I respond to that role play. But it's easier for me because I'm not in the energy field of the real client. But the people who role play also get an enormous uh, benefit from inhabiting their client for a while, and they very often discover things that make them able to be much more effective with their clients. But that's what Stump the Chump is just, say,
Okay.
inviting you to role play, a person with a part that makes it interferes with their healing, basically.
hmm Okay. How about we give this a try? You want to
Okay,
play?
fair enough. So you're going to role play a client, and what should I call you when we're doing this?
Well, I have a few different ones, so we'll just start with the first one, and let me think.
Well, you can just use any name other than Patricia, probably.
Okay, call me Sue.
Sue. So, Sue, how can I be useful this morning or this afternoon? Sorry.
I've been dating some different people, and as you know, I've been single a long time, and I just
Yeah,
really want a relationship. I really want, an ongoing companion in my life.
yeah.
But every time I date someone, like this person I just met, we hooked up a few times. I really liked her, but I hate to tell you this, but she just had like a little extra fat around the middle there.
Yeah.
And like, I just don't
Okay.
think I could be with somebody that has that extra little bit of fat around the middle.
Okay. So, how can I be useful about this?
I just want someone to understand that there's just actually something wrong with like everyone I've ever dated. Like it's not that I'm so picky, but like there's just why would I want to commit to somebody who just there was something wrong with them.
Yeah, I got it. So you have a part that just asked a question. Okay, and the question it just asked was, why should I commit or take seriously or attach to a person whose body is not perfect? Do I have that
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. I mean, it's not always their body. Sometimes like they don't have a
It's
good
something about
job
them,
or
or
they're like
they
they've got like their kid as a problem or
or they stutter, or they have a
Mhm.
bad fashion sense, or they.
Yeah, have you been spying on me?
Yes, I have. As a matter of fact, my agents are everywhere. But that part asks that question, why should I? And if the question is a real question, then I'll try to answer it. And if
Hmm.
it's a rhetorical question, there's no point in me trying to answer it because it really is a statement saying I shouldn't
Hmm.
commit to anybody who I that this judgmental part of me finds unacceptable. So I'm
Well, I don't know
wondering,
that I'm so judgmental. I just don't want
you
to
you're
be
not.
be
You have a
miserable.
part. You have a part that makes judgments. And that part basically is scanning, is my experience. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is my understanding. You have a part that's scanning any potential partner for flaws and is very successful at that, has been able to find a flaw in everybody. And I can confidently predict it will continue to be successful in finding flaws because it's really good at it. And, it has a very strong record. So, but there are other parts of you that may want to decide whether your best interest is served by turning your intimate life over to that part of you, or whether you think it might be useful to make friends with that part and see if it can become a little more flexible in the way it serves you.
Can I be honest with you, Mike? I just felt a little scared when you said that.
Okay, where did that scared feeling, how did you experience it in relation to your body?
Oh, I felt it sort of shoot down my center.
So it may be really useful to just put your attention on that sensation and just ask that part that responded that way what it wants you to know and let it know that we're not going to do anything against its will. Until it feels that it's safe to proceed, we're not going anywhere.
So this part sort of likes it better if the one that finds flaws is looking at other people.
Of
Because
course it does.
I think it doesn't want it to look at me.
What's it afraid might happen if it did?
Oh,
Uh,
ugh.
could this part that just responded, would it be able to use words to describe, so I get a better understanding
Yeah.
of,
I think it's sort of envisioning just all this criticism coming at it.
well, this part sounds like it's afraid that if you turn your attention inward, you would find that you're bad and that you would be held in the balance and found wanting. And I just want to say one thing about that, which is that's not going to happen. And the reason I know it's not going to happen is I've been doing this a really long time,
Mm,
and I talk to a lot of other people who do this a lot,
mm,
and it's never happened yet.
hmm.
You're not bad, but you have parts that are terrified that you are. And the reason I know that is you look just like a human being,
Mm.
and that's what human beings do.
I, can I tell you, the fear of the part feels a little different than that, if I'm
Okay,
being honest.
then
Yeah.
help me, please.
Yeah. It's more like just it's like a fire hydrant of criticism coming at it, and more
Yeah.
like the unpleasantness of that. Like it's sort of like being like a bomb getting dropped on it.
Yeah, but that's because, yeah, here's the thing. The reason I have trouble working with you is that I'm aware that you are a terrorist. And therefore, now notice, did that hurt? That criticism I just made of you?
I felt like it wasn't accurate.
Sure it wasn't. Or if it was, you've done a very good job of concealing that. But
Mm,
in other words, it didn't land anywhere. And Cinco uses Teflon and Velcro. You see,
mhm.
and this was Teflon. In other words, there's no part of you that's afraid you're a terrorist. This accusation had no effect on you, and I would imagine the response was something like, "What a weird thing to say. I wonder what's going on with him." In other
Mm,
words, compassion and curiosity. If I said, "You're selfish," don't you? I can see the response, and we're role playing. But the fact is, we all have parts that are afraid we're selfish because we all have parts that are selfish. And therefore, it sticks and it hurts because we can't stand being judged morally. We can't stand it. And this part can't stand it. And my parts can't stand it either.
mhm.
So this part is really afraid that it's going to be judged morally the way this other part judges potential partners of yours. Do I have that
Mhm.
right?
Um, right enough, I think.
Okay. So so just check with the idea, how do your parts respond to the idea of us making friends with this part that makes these judgments and trying to bring some self-energy to it?
I do notice feeling a little less intimidated by it.
Oh, that's nice. Do you feel less intimidated enough to give it a try?
Yeah.
Okay, with the understanding that if anything starts to feel unsafe, we'll do whatever we need to do so that the part that feels unsafe feels safe enough to proceed.
Mhm.
That's our agreement. Does that work with you? Okay. So then all we have to do is go to some moment when this part was active, when
Mhm.
you were looking at a potential partner and you notice this part pointing out the flaws in this partner.
Yeah. Like I was saying, this was just, this week,
Yeah,
just,
with the woman with a little belly fat.
yeah.
Yeah. So where do you experience? How do you experience that part in relation to your body?
It kind of is like, uh-oh. Like I
Yeah,
noticed the belly fat and then this part.
yeah. And was there a feeling in your body, or was it just a thought?
No, there was a feeling in my body.
And well, where in your body did you notice this part?
It's almost like a
Express.
jolt of electricity that comes up.
Okay. Yeah. So put your attention on that sensation, and just make a request that the part that generated it
Mhm.
have a conversation with the understanding that it will not be criticized or pressured to do anything it doesn't want to do, and see if
Mhm.
it's willing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to step out of role for a second and say, as far as I can tell now, we have a valid therapeutic contract and
Mhm.
we're off at work.
Mhm.
So at this point, it's just,
Right. That's
success.
great. Can I share what I
Oh, yeah,
noticed in my
absolutely.
system?
Yeah, no, that's all the,
So, what I noticed was the jolt of electricity was this one that gets impacted by the judgmental one because this one starts to connect, starts to attach. This one likes the
yeah,
person that I was
yeah, we
with.
got to the polarized part.
So this one liked the person, and then this one issued an
Yeah,
alert, uh-oh, belly fat, which
yeah,
then jolted the one
right.
that wanted to
Yeah.
attach with
Yeah,
like, oh
no,
no, now
we
I
got
can't.
one, yeah, we
Yeah.
got one end of the polarity.
Right.
And then, but basically we had a therapeutic contract.
Yes,
And
yes.
and once, this person parts are willing to let them do what we do,
Mm-hmm.
then it's just IFS, that
Mm-hmm.
your audience knows what to do from here. You see,
Mm-hmm.
because what what I try to do and what I, sort of say we haven't stumped the chump, is
Mm-hmm.
that is to get a valid therapeutic contract with parts that are not so sure they want to do that.
Yeah.
And you were playing a woman, Sue, who had a part like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was demonstrating how you can uh, basically befriend that part and get some willingness to explore it, and then we do IFS and bring self energy to it.
Very interesting. Very interesting. There's a matter of style, right? Like people have different styles
Oh
in
yeah,
their
my
in their work.
that's why I've never done level ones alone. Because my style is very distinctive. I use a lot of hypnotic technology, and I'm very male, and I have a deep voice, and I'm tall, and I've got all that. And that's first, I mean, people learn the model by imitating. Like I learned it by imitating Dick. That's how I learned IFS. And that's how my style is easy for some people to imitate and very difficult for other people to imitate. That's why I always co-lead level ones with a woman, whether it's Renan or Sue McCon, I've all Tony, I've done a number of, uh, because of what you just said, that my style is pretty distinctive. And so level two, people already do IFS. So then, this kind of thing that we just did, I think would be useful to people, even if their style is antithetical to mine.
And does that feel like enough? We're coming up toward the end, or do you have the energy for another stump the chump?
Oh, I love doing this, as you could probably tell. And
Yes.
I'm at a point in my life where distractions are useful. I'm happy to do another one. What should I call the person you're going to be playing now?
You can call me Ned.
Ned. So, Ned, how can I be useful this afternoon?
Well, Mike, how about that game last weekend, huh? That was pretty good, wasn't it?
I'm not sure what game you're referring to. I love watching sports, so it's a
Hmm.
good way to start a conversation with me, but I don't know what game you're referring to.
Yeah, well, I was thinking of the baseball game, and then there was the basketball game, and
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all right. My wife made me come here, and she's tired of me not being able to initiate. This is very embarrassing to say, Mike.
Okay. Can I feedback my understanding of what you're trying to
Mhm,
communicate?
mhm.
The impression I have is that your wife said, I really need you to be more, to show me more courtship and show an interest in making love to me. And you need to go to a therapist and get that fixed, or our marriage isn't going to survive. Do I have that right?
Pretty close, yeah.
Yeah, could you correct where it's wrong?
That's pretty close. I mean, we haven't really talked about splitting up, but that's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. This is something that I've observed because I've been doing this a long time. If you're in a couple, the quality of the space between you and your partner will determine the quality of your life more than any other single factor. And so, right now, you are quite justly concerned. You have parts that are very concerned about the quality of space between you and your partner, because the impression I have is that there's a part of you that's blocking your sexual response to her. And so it's very hard or even impossible for you to basically be sexual with her. Do I have that
Mhm.
right?
I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, Mike. I've really attracted to her. It's not that.
She, you're, she's very, you're, the way I'm understanding this is that your wife is a very attractive, pretty woman. And anybody in their right mind would be attracted to her if they were heterosexual or
Well, I'm attracted to her.
so. Would she agree with you about that?
Well, she doesn't get to feel it from me, but I know I'm attracted to her.
Okay, so there's a part of you that's attracted to her and finds her attractive, sexually stimulating, and yeah.
Mhm.
But what I would take you to be telling me, though, is that there's another part of you that's blocking that part from expressing itself. Do I have that
Mhm.
right?
I mean, it must be because I don't know why. It just doesn't make any sense
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah, no, that makes uh so one proposal I might make is that we either make friends first with the part of you that's attracted to her, or the part of you that blocks that attraction. But at some point, we need to make friends with both those parts and find out what's going on with them, so that they behave more consistently with your well-being. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So which part is easier for you to access? The part that's attracted to her, or the part that's blocking the expression of that attraction?
Well, I think I know I'm attracted to her, so that feels a little more
Okay.
understandable to me. I mean, I see how
Well,
she
yeah.
looks and I know, but she wants me. She's so mad that I'm not doing that, that
Yeah.
then I
Yeah. No,
just,
here's the thing. Protective parts put out the fire with gasoline. That's what they do. They can't help it. So so she's saying, why do you find me attractive? Tell me you love me. It's exactly that parts of her that make her less attractive. And that's what we do. That's what humans do. So she's doing things that, in fact, energize the part of you that blocks your attraction. Because when you're feeling morally judged by somebody, you're not going to be attracted to them. You're going to see them as dangerous.
Mhm.
And right now, she's dangerous to you. And the thing is, you're also dangerous to her. I have a wonderful marriage with my wife, and I'm incredibly grateful for her presence in my life. And she's the most dangerous person in my life, and I'm the most dangerous person in her life because she has more power to make me feel bad than any other human being on earth, and I have more power to make her feel bad than any other human being on earth. And I suspect that's true of you and your wife too.
Yeah, that kind of might make sense.
Okay. Now, let me just again step out of the role play for a second and say I'm not going to have any problem with this guy. Ned and I are going to do just fine.
Hmm.
We've come up with a therapeutic contract, which is to work with these polarized parts around his response to his wife.
Hmm.
And my guess is what Ned's going to need to do is learn some self defense and learn how to keep his wife out of where she doesn't belong so that he feels safe with her and he can have sex with her. And, I've seen any number of couples where they're just beautiful. They look like they walked off a magazine. And, I have to keep the parts of me that want to, kiss his wife all over to stay back because she's so beautiful. And they have no interest in each other. And so have you. You've seen what, scores of these couples because they're not safe. It's that simple, which, simple as distinct from easy.
Right.
Uh, but that's the way I would
Mhm.
approach this. And, both of us have had hundreds of Neds in our lives. And I have a Ned that needed help to make my relationship safe.
So then you could work with the challenging protector and get the therapeutic contract, and we're not doing it in the demo here, but maybe that would lead to an exile. Maybe
Yeah,
there's,
well, but
would you
yeah,
do the exile work or do you tend to just stay with the
oh no, I do
protectors?
exile work.
Mhm.
But what I'm doing here, we all know how to do exile work. People are afraid of exile work, but it's the easiest work in IFS because when you're doing it, you have self energy available, and so there's nothing to it. The work that I do is to make self energy available to parts, which means addressing the parts that make that difficult. And so that's what I do with Stump the Chump. Once we have a contract to do the 6 Fs and all that, then all the people out there know what to do from there. It's a question of basically, addressing the parts of Ned that are afraid of finding out they're bad. And once that's happened, then Ned's not a problem. I probably, want to see Ned's wife really soon because, for one thing, she has parts that are going to make our work more difficult. And we were just talking about those parts, as a matter of fact. So if she is engaged in the project in a positive way, then it's going to make it much easier for it to be successful.
Yeah, I think that resonates a lot. And the beauty of this approach is that each person has self energy, and we know that they do,
Yeah.
right? And I recently had the chance to do some consultation with some people that are not IFS
Ah.
trained, and it's such a different feeling as a therapist when you don't believe there's any self energy in
Yeah.
the
Well,
room.
it's like trying to coach basketball with somebody who is slow and has thick leg. They don't have a resource that makes it so much easier to be successful.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so it's another level of different. It's like Ned. You have to go through a step that you don't have to go through with people who are aware that self
Yeah.
energy is a resource.
I find using IFS as a sex therapist that often people are surprised that in the end it's just IFS because
Yeah,
there's so much charge often for therapists as well as clients around sexuality as a topic.
yeah,
And like you said, there's so much shame that can be there
right.
that has to get, sort of settled. But once that gets settled, it's the same old
Then it's IFS, right?
IFS.
And that's what I'm trying to do. In other words, and because I'm a big guy with a deep voice, I'm able to be much more direct, and I just said, this is my understanding of what's going on. And so it saves time. If, obviously my directness gets protective response, then I get less direct, obviously, but I'm more comfortable being direct if my client's parts let me. And just an expression I used to use is hit him with a fish. And with both of the clients you presented, I was able to do that. So that, made things move along. But also, you're not a professional actress. And so you don't experience the level of fear these people are experiencing. It's just, I just did a thing with David Hoffman, and he first met me when I did a workshop at a conference called Fun with a Couple from Hell, and to talk about high conflict couples. And I stopped doing that because people can't play high conflict couples, because they haven't been living unhappily together for 15 years. There's somebody they just met, and after 3 or 4 interactions, they're pussycats because they don't have that level of fear. And real high conflict couples, of course, everything each of them does triggers protector energy, and sort of working your way through that. You can't demonstrate it. Just like these role plays, you can't not use resources you have.
Right,
So you're
right.
you're easy.
So, in the context of sexuality, that feels like something that has baggage attached to it.
Sure it does.
A woman being told she's easy.
Yep, you're a snap. But yeah, that any word, that's the thing about sexuality is that a word like easy is a synonym for slut.
Right.
And slut is a synonym for women who basically give their gifts away for nothing and therefore are stupid and worthless. Because that's what a woman's got. And that is the only real power a woman has with a man. And once she has surrendered that in our context, she has given up her power. So women who are have parts that need to control and like that will use their sexuality to do that because it's what they've got. Just like kids, the only power they have with parents is guilt.
So,
Is
Mike, I have to ask you there, are you saying this is what the parts would say? Are you saying this is what you believe?
no, well, this is it's my observation. It's like Trump saying, "Yeah, you grab 'em by the pussy. That's always been true. I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. That's what Trump says.
Mhm.
But the thing is, in our society, basically, our society is constructed so that still, with all the quote progress we have, which is now being disassembled systematically, women, women still make 2/3 of what men make financially. And women, the first woman, whatever, which is a big breakthrough, the first black, whatever, which just assumes that these people are inherently disadvantaged and they're lucky to get privileges that men take for granted. So what I'm talking about is patriarchy.
Mhm.
And and so what power women have has
Mhm.
to do with the fact that they have something men want
Mhm.
if the men are heterosexual. If they're not heterosexual, then they don't have that power.
Mhm.
Uh,
Right. So in the construct, so within this traditional
yeah,
binary kind of patriarchal,
And
white supremacist
yes,
culture, that
well,
people that is those are some of the beliefs and principles that have undergirded it, and then parts internalize those
you're right.
beliefs, and that's the power of an insult like slut,
Yep.
is that it's saying that you have expended your capital
Yeah.
um, in a
Well, that's
foolish
that's
way.
one way to, but I would guess that when I used that word with you, you noticed a part reacting and that it hurt, even though you're extremely sophisticated about this. I mean, you're in the top one tiny percentage of the top percentage of people who are sophisticated in this particular issue. But my guess is when I said, you're a slut, and I just said it again, I saw the reaction because
Yeah, though it does. There's injuries there. There's
yeah,
prior
I'm,
injuries
of
there.
course, I'm hitting
Yeah.
you in a bruise.
Hmm.
And, because I'm hypnotically trained, I can see reactions that most
Hmm.
people don't differentiate.
Hmm.
But of course, and if I said it again, you would react again because there's a part that that hurts,
Hmm.
that has given moral meaning to that word, even though your intellect, I mean, you've written, I'm sure, treatises about the invalidity of that, but that doesn't
I,
help that part.
I notice having a question, I guess, about the like with the hurt there, right? Like
Yeah,
with it's stinging. There's the moral meaning piece, and there's also the exclusion from the safety of the tribe.
right.
So, like, is the moral, I think almost the concept of belonging or not belonging is
That's a big, yeah. That,
even beyond the more, like, it's the next step
well,
after
that's
the
what moral
moral.
meaning is. It is feeling, I mean, that you can't be bad, which means that you need to feel safe in your social context, whatever it
Mhm.
is. That word would mean less probably if you were a sex worker, but it still would hit. And, one of the things, I used to work with a bunch of sex workers because addiction is not unknown in that population. And I used to do a lot of work with addiction, still do. Actually, we all do. And, I would tell them, look, you and I are in the same business. Both of us provide a relationship that usually requires intimacy, and instead we provide that relationship for money. And
Well,
the only difference
yeah.
between you and
Yeah.
me is I get to do it with my clothes on.
For me, it's not about, yeah, it's the energy behind it, right? So if you're using a word like that, the word has some historical
Yeah, it sure
legacy
does.
punch to it, but also it's being said in a way
Oh, yeah.
from a part that
Yeah.
is using it in a way to do a power up,
Yeah.
power down.
Yeah. Well, no, there's no question. I said it with the intention of triggering you.
Hmm. Right. Right.
And if I said it, in a social context, I
Hmm.
wouldn't be aware that I was trying to trigger you. I'd be aware that I was trying to hurt you.
So I have a question there, and I know we're getting close to the end here,
Yeah, no,
but
fine.
I'm going to say some people,
Yeah.
and maybe I've met more who are socialized as men than women, really like to trigger other people and use bait like that
I have a
because
part
they get
that
off
person.
on it.
Yeah. No, that's also true, and I've been called on that. And I do have a part that likes to play near the edge. And I was in a training, and it was the second weekend, and I said to Ann Cinco, for somebody as beautiful as you're really smart. And I got a tremendous reaction from the group. And Ann said, that's a fifth weekend joke, not a second weekend joke. But what I had to own before the group would let it go is that I like to trigger them and I
Hmm.
like to generate discomfort and then process that.
Hmm.
And you've noticed that in my clinical style because
Right.
I did that same thing
Right.
during our role plays.
Hmm.
And that's because I have a part that gets off on it.
Hmm.
And I could do the same thing without triggering, I'm sure. But it's something that I've learned to do, and I've sort of learned to tame it
Mhm.
so that it doesn't cause me as much trouble as it used to. It
Or
still,
I could even say, whether this is something you do or someone else does, is that you can ask, I'm going to be provocative. Would that be okay with you? And then, but
right.
that probably takes away some of the drama.
It might, yeah, then, yeah. But it doesn't take it all away. Like I told you, if I called you that name again, it would still trigger you.
Hmm.
Uh, obviously you'll develop, it's just like getting into cold water. You'll develop a tolerance for it. And if I did it 5 or 6 times, you probably wouldn't notice it.
Hmm.
But if then we were apart for a couple of weeks and I did it again, that's
Well,
why,
that's where protectors come in, right? So protectors might come in
right.
to numb or to
Yeah, whatever they
say
do.
whatever it is that they
Yeah,
do.
however they put out the fire with gasoline, that's what they
Hmm.
do. They
Hmm.
can't not
Yeah.
put out the fire with gasoline.
Hmm.
That's because that's what protectors do.
So, do you have any advice for anyone listening who maybe is not working with an IFS therapist, but is running into some challenging protectors in their sex life?
Sure.
Anything they could try on their own at home?
There are a lot of things. Here's the problem. There are people who say you can do IFS alone, and you can certainly talk to your parts alone and develop a relationship with them, but you can't tell when you're blended. Just like you can't tell when you have spinach on your teeth. You need somebody out here to do. So I don't, I'm suspicious of the people who say you can do this work on your own because when people do it, they're fine until they run into something triggering. And then parts blend and they don't know they've blended, but there's no longer self available.
Hmm.
And part of our job as IFS therapists is detecting parts and getting them to unblend. And you can't do that when you're your own. I've been doing this for a long time, and I can't do it. That's why I pay Tom Holmes to work with me so he can spot the spinach on my teeth and spot when I'm in a part.
So, any
And
resources that you would
yeah,
recommend
I
to
would say they
people?
ought to call Patty, Rich, and see if she can make a referral. Because
Yeah.
if they don't have access to an IFS therapist, I'm a fanatic for this model. And I think so. They ought to find themselves an IFS therapist and find out if they're really using IFS. And if they're not, fire them and find somebody who is. Because there are people who say they are using it, but they're not. And I've met a lot of them because I consult to them. And what I'm trying to do is get them to use the model, obviously.
Got it. And how can people find you?
Okay, my email address is mjelkin@verizon.net. Right now, I'm not starting projects with new clients. I run I guess you'd have to call it a business called Demos, DEMOZ, and you can reach it by going on www.ifsdemoz.com. And I do on that what I just did with you, which is I do demos with either difficult parts that people are role playing, which I prefer, or I also do level one demos with people who just want to work with a part of theirs in real time. And I do that for an hour and then I answer questions about it for an hour. And I also have other senior IFS trainers who do it once a month. I do it twice a month. And it costs $35 to go on, and you get a tape of it. A lot of people don't can't watch the original, but they go on and get a tape because I'm trying to price it like an expensive lunch. I want to make this level of training available to as many people as I possibly can. That's what it's for. I'm not trying to make money. I'm too old to make money at this point.
So, Mike, we can put in the show notes all the
Yeah, okay.
contact information if
Yeah.
people are interested in
Yeah,
IFS demos.
I wanna consult to everybody, but I can't. But I run consultation groups with 6 people. They last for 2 hours and they cost $75 a group, and people are asked to commit to 5 groups at a time.
That sounds great. So, Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your style, your insights here. And I have one closing question,
Yeah.
which is if you could share something that you find pleasurable in your life.
What lights me up is feeling useful. And that what I've learned is that being helpful feels good. It just does. And if somebody comes to me and they're depressed, I will say to them, there is something you can do that will make you feel better. I guarantee it. But there are parts of you that are going to make that really hard right now. And there's no moral meaning to that. But if you can find a way to do service and help other people without material compensation, I guarantee you'll feel better because that's so feeling useful is the thing that lights me up most because frankly, sex doesn't have a lot of energy in my life now. I'm 83 years old. And my wife and I have a wonderful physical relationship, but it's much less directly erotic than it was some years ago. We've been together 30 years now, and I've had another 30-year marriage before that. So I'm an expert on being married.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you, Mike, and I wish you well.
And you.
Thank you for listening to the Self Led in Bed podcast. Check us out at www.patriciarich.com/podcast, where you can sign up for a free guide to the 6 S's of sexual self-energy. And if you liked this episode, please subscribe and share it with a friend. Until next time.